Good evening, and we welcome you to today's episode of Let's Talk About. On Let's Talk About, we discuss the various issues that the Christian has to deal with on a regular basis in the course of his or her daily endeavor. And on today's episode, we want to talk about something that has become particularly topical in recent months. Today, we are talking about gender-based as well as intimate partner violence. And that is going to be our conversation this evening. We would expect that you're going to be contributing in various forms through your suggestions, your comments, as well as your questions. And you can send them via our various social media platforms. We are coming to you live from Trinity United Church, Legon, here in East Legon on the campus of Trinity Theological Seminary. And to join us to have this particular conversation this evening, we are privileged to have two persons who have agreed to be identified as advocates against gender-based violence. To start with my immediate left, and of course ladies first, is Mrs. Joanna Osei Tutu. She is, and as she chooses to be described, an advocate against gender-based violence. Joanna, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Also next to Joanna is Mr. Frank Wilson Buja. And Mr. Buja is the Deputy Director responsible for conflict management and resolution with the National Peace Council. Mr. Buja, you're welcome to the show.
Thank you. And a gender advocate.
Oh, yes. Very important. So, just to get clarity on what we mean by gender-based or intimate partner violence. Let's start with the main one. Then we can look at the adjectives. When we talk about violence, typically, and starting with you, Mr. Buja, what constitutes violence?
Any act or action that will harm somebody or that will cause sometimes fear, intimidation, anxiety, is what we mean by violence. But when we move on further to what we call gender-based violence, it is any violence or any action that is perpetrated against somebody based on that person's gender. Or because, for instance, it's a child, or it's a female, or it's a male. That is why such action will be perpetrated against such a person. Sometimes not only about person or in terms of the makeup, but the relationship between such a person will lead to some sort of violence. But most often with the intimacy or intimate violence, it is most often domestic. People we have relationship with, father, son, child, mother, niece, uncle, or husband and wife. And most often, gender-based violence is perpetrated against women more. We are not saying that it doesn't affect men, it affects men, it affects children. But most often, the female gender is under threat when it comes to gender-based violence.
I suppose that's what would have informed the then Women and Juvenile Unit of the Ghana Police Service, what was known as WAJU.
WAJU, yeah.
Which has now been, rechristened DOFSU.
DOFSU, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
all right. Coming to you, Joanna. So he spoke about, especially the intimate partner violence being very domestic. Is the home the only place that we find gender-based as well as intimate partner violence manifesting?
Well, no, I think he spoke about domestic violence, which is the home-based, and then he broke it down into intimate partner, which is someone you have an intimate relationship with. So domestic relationship, and then, of course, your partner. But gender-based violence happens in every human institution. It happens in churches, it happens in mosques, it happens in the workplace, it happens in the trotro, it happens in the taxi, it happens when you are walking down the street, it happens on social media, it happens anywhere human beings interact, it happens, or it can happen. Let me put it that way. So as long as persons, and as Frank said, it's something that occurs against a person based on their gender. So when you have opposite gender or people of the same gender in the same environment, it can happen. So it's not specific to the domestic setting. As long as people are gathering, it is a possibility of it occurring.
Staying with you further, and let's look at the manifestations, because now in his introductory remark, he did indicate that it is anything that causes harm or fear or anything of that sort. Talking within the context of gender-based as well as intimate partner violence, what are the forms of manifestations that it tends to have? How do they show up?
I think broadly speaking, it shows up in about 5 ways.
Okay.
There's a sexual, there's a physical, there's an emotional or psychosocial, there are the traditional ones, and then we have the socioeconomic ones.
Okay.
So if you look at the sexual ones, that's the basic one that we all know about: rape, defilement, incest, sodomy, sodomy. So rape, incest, defilement, sodomy. Those are the basic ones that we always hear about. Then we talk about the physical one, the slaps, the burning, the acid, the throwing of acid, which other one the whipping, the burning off with cigarettes, the excessive caning, the excessive anything that has to do with a physical sort. I want to say the boxing. Yeah, the boxing. Let me use that word. So people think another human being
within a non-professional space.
Even a professional space. But yeah, a non-professional space. So yes, so people think another human being is a boxing bag. So they turn them into a boxing bag. So the throwing of glass or any object against a person. But the one that is very silent and people suffer it a lot very quietly is the emotional and the psychosocial one.
Okay.
The humiliation, the degradation, the insults, the isolation, the degradation of the self. So the person lives at home with another person, and gradually the person is being isolated from their social network. Typical example, and I'll use this as the domestic setting. Husband and wife or partners, don't go here. I don't want you to talk to this person. I don't want to see you with this person. If I see you with this person, matter will come. And then it leads to the violence. So if a husband sees a wife with a friend or a colleague that he or she is not comfortable with, or even she is not comfortable with, when they go home, or it can be in the car park, it can be at a church compound, wherever the person sees the act that they are not happy with, wahala will start. It can be insults, it can be physical violence, it can be slaps, it can be anything that would make a person realize that I am unhappy with you. And it goes on to the point where you are insulted to the point where you feel you are a non-entity. And it's done to the point where the person's self-being, the person's, I remember, if you remember our social studies, your ego, your id, your being is degraded to a point where you feel you are insignificant to an ant. So they are unable to even see themselves away from their home. And it starts very gradual. Don't talk to your mother. Don't talk to your father. Don't talk to your siblings. Their phones are taken away from them. Their ATMs are taken away from them. Apart from church, you can't go anywhere else. They are isolated from their social networks. Their families only see them at funerals or only at weddings. And the family thinks, we don't chill home. Umpe so worry you want any baby. On any baby. Obani pemua okofia ebeyasem. And they are threatening with, if you dare, you lose your children. So the psychological and the emotional abuse, which most often are not, people don't see. When you go to the police station, which I've heard a lot of people say, I'm sure Frank has also heard the same thing. They will ask you, Obu, patro debi. Uchiya school fees, in patro ain. Mudidi, me patro ain. To how on the same. And even you ask yourself the same question. The person who is suffering, the victim or the survivor, is asking the same question. And for the men, they may not be isolated, but you wake up in the morning and there's a human voice in your head that can nag to the point where your head, all you hear in your head is that a person's voice. You're a useless man. Your mates are doing this. Your colleagues are doing this. Your mates have done this. Look at how your colleagues have. Look at the houses they have done. You are being compared to every human, every male object in this world. As if, as for you, since you came into this world, you've not even bought a pair of socks before. So that emotional and psychological abuse makes a person feel as if they are worthless and they are unable to do anything sensible in their life.
I see.
And then there's a harmful traditional practices. Child marriage. You're looking at Ghana, so child marriage, it still happens. Some of our widowhood rights. FGM, we say we've abolished it, but it still happens. There are some countries where there are other ones that, of course, we're looking at Ghana, but child marriage still happens. We think it's I don't know what it is, but we still find young girls being given away into marriage as young as 13, 14, and they're being given away into marriage. Our widowhood rights, oh, it's tradition. Oh, it's tradition. Oh, it's tradition. But I keep asking myself, I think Frank said women are suffering the most. A woman's husband dies, and she has to go through tradition. A man's wife dies, and within 6 weeks, he's remarrying. What about the tradition?
So there's a certain gender discrimination against women, especially when it comes to issues of widowhood rights, and I mean, as you
Cultural and social practices. Yeah.
generally are skewed against women,
Women, yeah.
within our local
Yes,
context.
yes.
When she was talking, and especially when she was talking about a man typically waking up to a nagging voice in his ears, it reminds me of Proverbs 21 verse 9. It says it's better to live at the attic of a house than to stay in the same room with a contentious woman.
I think that I mentioned earlier that the gender-based violence or domestic violence or maybe what you call the intimate violence happen to men and women. What we are saying is that in terms of gravity, it is skewed against the women.
Women a lot more.
Yes, and I was checking some statistics. For instance, U.S. One out of seven women are always abused, intimacy and all that. 1 out of 9 men are also abused. You see, so it's here and there.
Yeah.
But in terms of
Gravity, it's more tilted against
it's
women.
more towards the women. And the fact also remains that our cultural, we may talk about the causes, but our cultural setup, particularly in Ghana and Africa, looks at the man as who has the power and who controls things. And in terms, because we practice what we call patriarchy, kind of thing. The man is the head of this, the man is so and so, the man, and we Christians also use it in a way. Even Muslims, the Islamic religion and Christian religion, they all talk about all this things, emphasizing it. So we accept it from childhood, and we think that it is normal that at any point in time, the woman should be submissive. So the little action from the woman is seen as awkward, not usual. They are challenging the norm. And for that matter, somebody will say, you know, you see, I don't know about control. We say all these things. Unfortunately, these are the things that perpetrate the variant also. She was talking about some of this thing. In fact, harassment is a critical issue in terms of sexual abuse.
Yes.
Somebody proposed to you, I don't like you. And, you know, they say, oh, as for Ghanaian women, you have to push and push and go and go. The person say, no, you are sending tests, you are calling. Sometimes even at the workplace, you know what happens. See you, touch the lady, touch the bottom. All those things are harassment. You see, but the thing is that if you say it, the person accepts, no problem. But the moment the person says no, but you use the Ghanaian, how do you call it, practice, push and push and push, until she accepts, it's also an issue.
So on that particular matter, let me ask this.
Yeah.
When does it transition from being persistent in a way that is desirable into a point of harassment?
I think you should know when somebody is being
Yeah.
flirtatious and somebody is saying no. And I think we as a society have not trained people to accept no in the first place. And there's a saying that no means yes. No doesn't mean yes. Consent is consent. There is informed consent and there's consent. Consent is where it's a mutual agreement between two people. Informed consent is where two people of the same relative power are giving mutual consent. If you ask me, should we go out for dinner? And I say, hell no. Excuse my language. I'm not saying no. I'm not saying, no, ask me again tomorrow.
It's like, don't try
I'm
it
saying
again.
no. So when I do sexual harassment trainings in offices, I tell them, if you're saying no, don't say no with a smile. Oh, don't say, say no. Say no. Be forceful with your no. And I think a lot of the ladies, women especially, we've been asked to be nice. Don't be too straight, like be nice. And in being nice, at times we give mixed signals. And I say it in trainings. When you're saying no to them, say no. Don't say no with a smile. They are giving oh no, oh, what do you mean by oh no? Say no. And keep saying no. And if they keep harassing you, document it. There's a new thing about somebody who's saying you wake up at 2 a.m. and there's a text, send me a picture of yourself. What? Send me a picture of yourself for what? Or you wake up and you see a text message at 2 a.m. of a naked picture of your colleague.
Yeah.
Start naked. And you think that's normal behavior. And when people complain, you are being told you are being fussy. Or HR thinks you are making a big fuss. What do you mean you're making a big fuss?
HR things.
Or your colleagues in the office think you're making a big fuss. That you've asked that you wake up at 2 a.m. and there's a naked picture of your male colleague. And they think, oh, it's normal.
Okay. So at the point where it is not welcome by the person at the receiving end, you need to stop.
It's harassment.
It's harassment.
Then it becomes harassment. Okay, so we are still here on Let's Talk About, coming to you live from Trinity United Church here in Lagos on sunny 88.7 FM here in Accra. So those of you listening to us on radio, yes, that's the dial, sunny 88.7. And we'll be happy to receive your comments and your questions as well, and your various suggestions. And you can send them to our WhatsApp number 0501 579 996. That's 0501 579 996. If you're watching us on Facebook or YouTube on Trinity United Church Legon, you can drop your comments and question there as well. We'll make some time and read them and try to address your questions as well. Yes.
Before you go, you asked about the forms. The new form that is also coming up now is the online abuse.
The cyber abuse.
The cyber abuse. For some reason, it's fanciful now for people to date and send pictures of themselves naked. For whatever reason, I don't know. Maybe I'm old school.
In fact, there's a song
That's
called Send Me Nudes.
Oh, wow, that's wonderful. Again, maybe I'm old school. Whatever it is, people find it fanciful to do that. And then when they break up, one person feels I am entitled to share those pictures publicly or to use it to threaten you to keep you in the relationship.
Blackmail.
Oh, you're being nice. I was being nice by saying threaten. You are using the nice word, the easier word. And so that happens. Or social media. People post a picture there and people think they have the right to now describe the human being in any way that they feel, whether male or female. And people, when somebody says passes a comment that it's inappropriate, people lash out and think you are being fussy. I remember, was it last year when one of the musicians put his daughter out, his 5-year-old child, and a young man made a comment, and people said it was inappropriate.
Yeah.
And he said he was only, glorifying her beauty. I said, that's a 5-year-old child. It's a 5-year-old child. In some other countries, you're being picked up for being a pedophile. But in Ghana, we think you are admiring God's creation. She's 5. But our culture sees it as, oh, it's nice. And we all call everybody uncle, auntie, uncle, auntie. Oh, come and sit on my lap. Be careful of those people.
Okay. We'll be going for a quick commercial break, musical break, I should say. But before we do that, let's look into some of the causes. Some of the pointers you were given were indicating some of the things that precipitate some of these things. If you can take us a bit in there, starting with you, Mr. Boja.
The causes are mainly two. The very remote causes and then the secondary causes, what we call primary and secondary causes. The primary ones have to do with, as one of them is the cultural issue. Because of our relationship, the culture, where we have portrayed men as leaders and all that. So we are always glorifying the men over the women.
Okay.
And where the woman wants to challenge a bit, then it becomes awkward that this woman is seemed to be, we call it pichiri and all those, must be silent. Okay? So when the women start to question things even at home, then it becomes an issue.
So there's a cultural underpinning to some of these forms of violence.
Yeah. The other thing is about socialization, how our upbringing, some of the songs that we even have, Obatu Totua Echri, Obembabu, Mbappe Soko, strategy. You see, some of these things that we see.
Did you nearly say Stradinam?
Yes,
okay,
Stradinam and all that. The interesting thing is that when the Stradinam is cooked in the house, both men and women eat it. Actually, you see, but unfortunately, they always look at that aspect that women want an environment that is, how should I say it, glamorous. They want to see easy going life. They don't want to suffer, and those are the things that we, tell our children when they are young. So they grow with it. All these songs and proverbs and adages that we use will influence the way you think. So if you always say that the woman is a weak or a weaker vessel, in any moment you want to see that woman at that level,
subdued.
So you can control.
Okay.
So all these things manifest later. The other side has to do with...
so if you could just hold that thought. Right. We'll come back and go further into some of the other courses. The show is Let's Talk About. It's live, coming to you from Trinity United Church. We are live on Facebook and YouTube on Trinity United Church Legon, and we're also live on Sunny 88.7 FM. We'll go for a quick musical break. We'll be right back to continue with the conversation.
Because you're still mighty.
Welcome back. Thank you very much, Brother Henry, for that particular rendition. And just before we went for the break, we were looking at some of the causes of some of these gender-based as well as intimate partner violence. And we would expect to receive your comments and your questions as well. You can send them to our WhatsApp line on 0501 579 996. 0501 579 996. If you're watching us on Facebook and YouTube, you can also drop your comments there. We come back to our panelists and would want to, yes, capture the remaining part of the submission.
One thing that also, in terms of the primary cause, is the economic issue. Who holds the the purse, controls everything in the house. In the past, until recently, our mothers, our grandmothers, they were not educated as we have today. What they do is the household chores and all that. But today, we have them in abundance, educated, working and all that. But in the past, it was a critical issue in terms of economic, where the women are not working, so they don't have enough resources. So the man having the resources controls everything. Controls who go to school, controls what the woman will do and all that. Even at a point in time when men became so rich, they stopped their wives from working. Unfortunately, if something happens on the way to work and something happens to you, in terms of particular those of us from the Akan area and all that, the officer will come and take everything, and then the women are left. So that kind of action to take away the property from the women, even that is violence against women. The other thing is also about not working. As far as you are not working and you don't have the means, even people you should look after, your mother, your father who are old, it becomes a challenge to you as a young person. And in a way, a little bit of issue. You get anxiety, you get angry, and then you want to even hit people, you want to beat up people.
Become abusive.
The other thing is that if men are not working, they even become more mad than the women.
Oh, really?
You know, yes, if men don't have money in their hands, and even if their wives are here supporting them, it is always an issue. The ego in men must be supported by the means. So if the means is not there, then the little thing, they become angry, they throw their hands. Something that you should laugh at annoys them and all that. So there are a lot of issues. The other thing is also about marriage. Marriage causes violence.
Marriage causes violence?
Yes. From the basic, it is the man who must pay the dowry. And so after paying the dowry, things that I have bought you, the woman.
There has been an acquisition.
Yes. And I want to tell you that we had a training all over the country. And when the country was 10 regions, it was divided into 10 regions. And every region that we went to, we had an exercise that we did, that everybody should list the property that they have. The men should list their property, the women should list their property. The men listed their wives as their property.
Every single region?
Every single region in this
Sorry,
country.
was it before the further demarcation into 16?
Before the
So
federal.
all 10 regions
And I
then?
believe that even if you go today, we'll
16.
get it from the 16 region. That is the mentality that we have put into, or the socialization we have given to ourselves. That as far as the man has paid for the dowry, owns you, you become the property. And so that is a rarity.
So he should be abusive?
Anything that they do to property can be done to the woman. That is how they think. So even marriage perpetuates violence. The other thing is also about religion.
Okay.
You know, we are Christians, so sometimes the emphasis on some of the verses is critical. I can't go to efficiency. That talks about the women should be
Wives
submissive.
should submit to their own
so-
husbands.
submit to their husband.
husbands, yeah.
And then the man must love.
Husbands must love their wives.
But you know, the first version talks about the man should love the wife, isn't
In
it?
fact,
Then the second version
in fact,
talks
there's
about
a verse that precedes those two. It says they should submit
to each
one
other.
Yes.
to the other.
That's what I was coming to. So the man was even given two instructions. The woman was given one.
Pretty
the first
much.
one talks about man loving the wife. The second one talks about the woman submitting to and then the third one talks about submitting to each
Each
other.
other.
So in a way, the submission is not only to the woman, but it is to both of them. But we emphasize it and all that. Someone will say that, oh, if we sit in the pew together, there will be some kind of fornication or something of that sort and all. So in some churches, the men will go and put the how do you call the collection time in the bowl, then the woman will follow all the other.
So
Some
they
people,
don't sit together.
they don't sit together. But when they move out from the church, don't they meet at the entrance? If they will fornicate. If even within the church premises, now that the men are sitting and the women are going to put the money into the collection bowl, they see everything now. Won't they fornicate? And the Bible tells us that even when you see and you don't say it, you have. So these are some of the things.
I
We
see.
emphasize on some of the verses to the detriment of the women.
Yeah.
So in a wedding preaching, we are emphasizing that. In our premarital counseling, we see all sorts of, so you could see that the emphasis is more on the woman than the man, thinking that the man may be older than the woman 2 years or 1 year, but look, a woman that is 25 years is older than a man that is 30 years. They are more mature in their thinking
Okay.
than the men. I'm telling you today.
I see.
So if you are giving counsel, look at two figures, a man and a woman, and give them equal counsel. Don't assume that
One
the
is
man,
older than the other.
and that, for that matter, will think more than the.
Okay.
These are the things that,
Tend to
even
cause.
within the church, we try to project the men.
So you
over
talk
there.
about cultural issues. You
Yes.
speak about religious
Yes.
issues. You talk about socialization,
Yes, education.
education, and all of that. Jonah, so there's this phenomenon, that I find very, I don't want to use the word interesting, but it's pretty worrying. I am learning that in certain relationships, it is actually an expectation on the part of the woman that the man should be abusive, because in being abusive, he's demonstrating love. I don't know if you know about this, and if you do, what informs that kind of thinking?
So, I mean, Frank has talked about the social, the religious, those are the societal causes. Then there are the individual causes. How the person was brought up, the environment where the person found themselves, what the person interprets as love, and how they think relationships should look like. So, the example you've given, the person may have been brought up in an environment where physical abuse was a demonstration of love. So if they're not receiving or they are not being their partner, and it's both ways, both male and female, if their partner doesn't show jealousy to a point of rage, then they don't love them.
Okay.
So you have to love me to a point where that another man looks at me, then that means you love me. But if what kind of love is this? If another man just calls my name and you're just reading your book, that means you don't love me enough that anybody can just take me away from you. So you must love me to a point where if another man even says good morning, your heart should beat and you are ready to punch somebody on my behalf. That is love to them. So if you're not ready to Christ die for me, you too should take a blow for me.
Some say they will take bullets for you.
And they mean it literally. If Christ could go on a cross for me, why can't you take a bullet for me?
That's
And they mean it literally. So that's how they see love as being demonstrated. That is their love language. the council talk about love language. They like, some people like hugs, some people like flowers. They like to be slapped. I'm sorry.
Wow.
So
It's a fact.
It's a fact. So if after 2 months, 3 months, there have not been any altercations, any physical, and I mean physical in the true sense of physical violence, they feel something is off. And they begin to think their partner is cheating on them or having an affair. Something is wrong.
So the partner may be slapping somebody else.
And bro, my one Hebron. I've heard that before being said by somebody. And bro, my one Hebron. So that's how they interpret love. Say, bro, my one Hebron. Like, it literally, that's the question the person asks her partner. So that's how they interpret love. Or the person grew up in a household where their father was abusive towards their mother and towards the children. And they take it to his house or their home.
So that's how they've been socialized.
That's how they've been socialized. And that's how they interpret love. That's how they interpret a relationship to mean. Or they grow up in an environment where back to the workplace, the men see nothing wrong with tapping women's buttocks. All the men do it. So they're going to the office, somebody's at the water fountain, fetching water, they slap them. There's a culture. So if you're a female, and the women have adapted it as, that's how the men are. So they make sure that when they're going to fetch water, there's no man around. So when you a female come in and you complain, you are being fussy. They all complain, but they don't make any deal about it. Because after all, that's how all the men are. It's an official platform, an office WhatsApp platform. They send pornography on it and discuss it openly, and nobody sees anything wrong with it. And then the question is, why? Are you the only person on this platform? If you make a comment about it, what are you being so fussy about? So, and it's because it's normal for them. You are the one who is complaining. So if you have a problem with it, exit. But this is an official, it's a work platform.
Interesting. And here I'm not using interesting in the truest sense of the word interesting. I mean, it's actually worrying. Yeah. But I mean, and I'm thinking of being, I mean, the worrisome nature of it. How does that maybe?
I wanted to support this thing.
Yes, so maybe you can tie that in.
That
you can tie that in with this particular question. How does that impact the individuals involved in that very violent relationship or situation, as well as their families and society at large? How do these kinds of gender-based as well as intimate partner violence impact society as a whole and the individuals involved?
All right. I wanted to give a little bit of evidence. BBC did a documentary in Africa, and they went to many countries interviewing people about abuses in marriages and all that. And they went to DR Congo, they came to Ghana, they went to many other countries, about 7 of them, and then they published their finding. This BBC focused on Africa. And it came out clearly. About 70% of the women they interviewed accepted the fact that if their husbands or partners beat them, then it means that they love them. Yes, it happened.
When they beat them, then it means they love them.
They love them, yeah. And if they are not beaten, it means that probably there's something happening, as we were saying. So it's a fact. You were talking about impact and all that. Look, the gender-based violence or even domestic violence has a lot of negativity. One, the bruises we see sometimes, a woman will come to office and is wearing dark specs and all that, doesn't want to show it or hiding in the office, then you know something is happening.
She's probably received some punches.
Or a child always go to school and is isolating herself from the people, from the friends and all that. And it's not focusing on the lessons. Then you know that something is happening in her life or in his life. The other thing is that apart from the physical things that you see on it, the emotional aspect. Many of the people we are having at Pantine, Ankafo, and all those places, mental homes, through just relationship that they are
abuses
abuses within the relationship that they have suffered and all that. Death. Some women, you know, this Takrady woman issue, okay? All of us initially, we thought that it couldn't have happened, that the woman will fake such a pregnancy. But the truth is that it happens. The society is demanding from this woman a child, no matter the medical condition. So in that way, look at how she went to that extent to get a child. Have you seen?
Yes.
So we want to do everything to get a child. Psychologically, that woman will never be stable because anytime she sees a child, and that's why I was telling you, even marriage brings some of this, cause some of this abuse. And these are some of the issues. Family members want the woman to have a child.
Interesting.
The husband wants the woman to have a child. So and so want the woman to have a child. The church want the woman to have a child so that they can have adoring and all that. The groups that they belong to, the classmates, when they see you, oh, you are married for so and so. In fact, when I'm married 2 years, we have not had issue. My sister, hey, when are you going to invite us? I told them that, look, I invited you, I informed you that I was going to marry. I found a woman I'm going to marry. Come and let's celebrate. So when the time is due for me to invite you to the child naming ceremony, I will invite you. And it ended it. Some people wouldn't say it as it is. And they continue to accept, and in a way, even if they don't like it, they will not say it. So the family members will continue to push until that day. A child that is raped, you can destroy the womb forever. You can destroy sexual transmitted diseases and all that could affect that person forever and ever. You can maim the person. Some pass through and they die. When I was at World Up, we had a lot of pictures of abuses, people who come to us and we support them. We seek their consent to take some of the pictures. The only thing is that we disguise at a point in time so that people will not get their true identity. But the truth is that it happens every day. And probably as we are speaking here now, it is happening. Somebody is being raped, somebody is being abused, somebody is being physically handled and all that. Somebody who has married a woman for about 30 years used cutlass on that woman to kill her, to maim her, and everything. The women even is very critical. Somebody said that, psychology said that the men can speak 2,000 words a day, and the women can speak about 8,000 words a day. So when they are angry and they start, like what we're talking about, the nagging wife, the man may not concentrate at the workplace, the man may not concentrate at home, even when after close of work, returning home, is afraid. And the same thing happens to the women too when they are in abusive relationship.
So it creates a certain psychological or emotional imbalance.
Yes, imbalance. It brings economic issue. If you are depriving the woman from working, cannot take off of herself, everything. Could you, Papa, give me 1 cedi to go and buy tomatoes, give me 1 cedi to buy my pant. These are the things that happen to
the privation of human dignity.
Yes,
and that's what I'm hearing you say.
This thing.
Okay.
And for people who are sexually abused, sometimes they cannot even marry again. When they see a man, they get angry. So you see a nice woman, you get close to propose, and we just snub you. You don't know what had happened to her before. And even some men cannot stand women who abuse them. Sometimes what we call scholarship. You are offering the scholarship, the man is also resisting the scholarship.
And not because he's trying to be virtuous.
No, you see, it's a human nature. As far as I don't like it, the woman doesn't like it. There are some men who will also not like it. And we should all learn to relate with people when they say no.
Okay.
Yeah.
We've received some of your comments. You can keep them coming in. The number is 0501 579 996. And also you can drop them on Facebook and YouTube, the pages on which we are streaming. Some comments coming in from Sister Ekiasena Danswa. She says, denial of intimacy is one major factor leading to cheating by spouses. Wow. And it says, say no and report to your supervisor. I suppose you are speaking with, in connection with workplace sexual harassment.
Former Minister of Gender, you know.
Oh, yes.
And former Minister of Sport.
Okay. And well, she's a member of this church as well.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Doreen Kuntomenu says, love this. And she adds a flame to that particular comment. Also, coming back to Sister Ikia Senadanso, she wants to, she says, thanks to Sunny FM for this great support. Bless your management and staff. Vaida Kwapuekufu. Great discussion, she says. Enoch Nyako says, this is a great discussion. Thankful for the panelists today. My question is, since one of the primary causes of gender-based violence is patriarchal ideas and notions, or let me say ideals and notions, what can the church as an organization do to help in unlearning these ideas a lot of us grew up with? And there's a famous quote attributed to Alvin Toffler. It says, the illiterate of the 21st century is not the one who cannot read and write, but the one who cannot learn and relearn. So coming to you, how can the church as an organization support in unlearning some of these patriarchal ideals and notions that we are attributing to some of these violence?
Well, I think this is one. This is one platform. But I think it's also about the church interpreting scripture in the right context. Because as Frank said, a lot of the misinformation has been the interpretation of scripture and using scripture in a way that at times places one gender above the other. So the church, when I say the church, I don't mean TUC, I mean the church universal.
Yeah.
Yes, the church universal granting equal opportunity in the interpretation of scripture. I know, for example, in some churches now, the Bible, when they're referring to the Bible and it has brothers or men, they use
Brethren.
brethren.
They would want to use a unisex
A unisex one, just so that it gives a feeling of everybody belongs. So having the church accepting that the membership has two genders, the membership have two entities in it. I know, for example, there are some churches now that have encouraged a standardized diary list. So any member who's getting married in their church uses that diary list. And nobody can add onto it. Okay. Just to cut out the excesses of diary. And then that idea of I have bought a wife. So there's a standard diary. I've seen one now that doesn't go beyond maybe 500 cedis.
But how do you interplay that with the traditional setting? Because you see, in our context, we say people marry into families, yes. All right? So when you are getting married, it's not just between the two individuals. So much as your churches may have a say, your families also would have a say. How does the church interplay with the families in such a way not to create conflict between the church and then the families?
But the church members, families can attend church. So the church members or the family members are church members.
That's all things being equal.
All things being equal. All things being equal. Church members are family members. Or yes, are
family members are
church members. Yes. Okay. So the hope is that as churches are educating members and are sensitizing members on these issues, it will seep into family practices. And I think now most churches are also finding ways and means of eliminating widowhood rights in a very polite way. So they are carrying out the widowhood processes in a very, I'm choosing my words very carefully, very diplomatic manners.
In a more dignified way.
That's why I said diplomatic. I'm choosing my way very diplomatic. So they're finding, they're putting structures in place to ensure that widowhood rights are done in the church. Yeah. Are done in a very structured manner, and it's done dignified manner, so that people know there's an option of bringing it to church, and you can push for it. Nowadays, even 1 week celebrations are now being brought to the church. So the church has a role of being a leader. The Bible says we should be the salt and the light. The church has that role If the church can find a way of pushing certain things gradually and educating people and making it themselves the avenue for it and giving the alternative route, once they offer the alternative route and it is seen as a viable alternative, people would begin to find the alternative route and listen.
Okay.
But I think the biggest challenge has been, is the church also offering services to the people who are going through these challenges. When a person comes to the minister or the counselor or the church elder and says, I am going through these challenges, and the option the church gives is, let's pray about it. Prayer is beautiful, but prayer alone doesn't solve the problem. I am going through this problem. My spouse, my partner is beating me. I am being abused at home. I am being violated at home. And you say, let's pray about it. When we finish praying, I have to go home and be abused. I have to go home and be violated. The prayer will not take away the violation. So the church also has to find...
But also scripture tells us that the heart of kings are in the hands of God.
My brother,
And, you know, it turns
the hearts of kings are in the hands of God. I don't dispute that. But at some point, you have to move a person away from a violent situation before the heart of the king can be turned. When the person comes to you in prayer, and you finish your prayer, they send that person back to the lion's den. Yes, the Lord closed Daniel's mouth, the lion's mouth, when Daniel was there. We are not sure after your prayer that the lion's mouth has been closed, unless they're going to stand guard at the door, like the king did.
Similarly, I mean,
Yes.
the Egyptians had to be moved. I mean, the Israelites
Had to move from Egypt. And before they got to the Red Sea, and it was parted for them. So you have to, at some point, the survivor or the victim has been moved. What avenues are the church providing?
By way of support.
Currently, let's ask ourselves in this country, how many homes do we have for survivors and victims of gender-based violence? Which is not even functioning. Frank Power. Is that even functioning? If a victim goes to Dofsu right now, the Dofsu is the biggest one, and complains of being a victim, bruised, beaten, bloody, raped, whatever it is, after filing a complaint, what does Dofsu put the person? Nowhere. Either family members come for the person, or the person goes back to the home of their perpetrator. But there's no place officially to put them. Our churches have built beautiful edifices. How many churches have built a shelter for the women who come and pray to them every year, every day, that Lord, change the heart of my husband? No church has done it. But every week, there are women in the churches praying that God, change my husband from beating me. What do you call it? Sowing seed. Sowing seed daily. Tell the minister in charge, ministers, my husband is beating me, change his heart, and then they will lead the olive oil on their head.
Certain men don't make the prayer for God to change the hearts of their wives.
I'm just saying. No, and that's the problem. We talked about the men and the numbers. How many men report? Because our patriarchal system makes it that it's shameful for men to report that they are being beaten by their wives.
You'll be laughed at.
You go and report and see what will happen to you. What is the problem? All I'm saying is that the church has to be the salt and the light. And currently, when it comes to domestic violence and JBV, the church is lacking behind.
Okay, let's read a few more comments and then we'll try to wrap up. Doreen Kuntomenu says, I am really enjoying the discussion. The host is thank you. Sister Ekia Senadansoa says, very unfortunate. Women are not chattel to be owned. They are partners to be appreciated and loved, and this will be reciprocated by the women. And she goes ahead to say, it is true. I had a neighbor several years ago who liked her husband beating her as a sign of love. She was in a polygamous marriage. So, I mean, that's another one. But just maybe to wrap up, there's a final question coming from Vida Kwapong Ekufu. That's Mrs. Vida Kwapong Ekufu. She says, what advice can you give when I am not the victim, but then I witness violence against a family member or friend? The bystander role.
The fact is that violence is cyclical. It goes round and comes back. It goes round and comes back. So there is even a story about a flower that he bought flower for me. The first day he offended me. Another time he bought a flower, and then the flower upgraded to vehicle.
Buy you a car
one day
after beating you.
After beating you, hit hard. The vehicle took the lady to the hospital. It became ambulance, and then did not return. You see, when such thing happen, report to the appropriate authorities or a leadership of a group or a family or even the church. It is very, very important. If you don't report an abuser, it will go round and it will hit you. And I want to give one example. Recently, a mate of mine called me that the uncle, who is about 77 years, has gone to rape somebody.
77?
77 years, has gone to rape somebody. And I asked, has he done it before? And said, yes, that when he was young, he was doing it. So, and the family members tried to protect him till today. 77, at this age that you should have your grandchildren with you, advising them not to do such things, you are rather doing it. So if you don't report such an abuser today, tomorrow it will come to you. It will go to your children. It will go to somebody close to you. So the first thing is that for me, you should report. Then the counseling. Those who and all those institutions, including the church, you should counsel the one who is abused and the abuser. Always. Even if the court would take legal action against such a person, that person also needs counseling. And we should not leave things just that the person has been sent to jail and all that. So we leave the victim, and now the person is in jail, so you are free. No. You should counsel that person to be able to even come back into the society. Other than that, that person could also abuse other people in retaliation.
Okay.
It happens.
Okay.
Some women who flirt because their husbands are flirting, so they think of retaliating. Some men who are flirting, they think that their wives are also hot, so they want to retaliate. So you need to counsel both of them and take the actions that need to be taken, particularly the ones that are criminal in nature. And every rape or defilement is criminal in nature. The bishop of the Methodist Conference cannot resolve that issue in the house.
It's a criminal matter.
It's a criminal matter.
It's for the state to resolve.
Nana Otumfuo cannot resolve that matter in his palace. It's a criminal matter. So any rape or defilement or anything that causes harm, physical, because rape is physical.
Okay. You know what? Let's be
And
practical.
sexual.
Let's be practical about this.
Yes.
If someone is in an abusive relationship and decides to report the abusive partner, and I mean, talk of reporting, you can call 191 or 18555 to the Ghana Police Service, and you can get some support. You'll be directed to the Domestic Violence and Victim Support Unit, so you can get some support. Talking of that, if this person is not economically empowered and his or her abusive partner is going to be incarcerated, the fear of loss of someone to supply or provide for the person, how does someone who finds him or herself in such a situation practically deal with such a situation?
You see, the family should support.
Family should.
Apart from that, yes, it's important.
About the causes of gender-based violence. I talked about socioeconomic. People are gender-based violence about control and power. I have power and I have control over you. Power can be physical, it can be financial. So some people will not report because, just as you said, and they are told to their faces. If there are people, both men and women, who have gone to report to their ministers, their pastors, their MCEs, their family members that this is my situation, and they are told to their face, "Go catch the police and they go share prison. When they make you on school fees."
So how do we deal with such a situation? How does such a person get the kind of support?
And that's why I
required?
went back to the role of the church and other institutions. That person will come to church and go to the altar and lay a seed. Else also a seed, and ask God, change my spouse, hoping that God will change the spouse. Or go to a minister, some pastor somewhere, and buy an anointing oil, asking that when they spray the anointing oil on the spouse's head, God will change that person, and the church will take the money. I'm not saying this church, I'm saying church universal. But the church has ways in which they can use some of these monies set up institutions or agencies to support these people. Because a lot of times, something will happen. A woman has been beaten up, a woman has died, and on social media, leave. And I ask the person, leave to where? Should they come to your house? Leave. Leave with your children. Leave and go where? They can't go and live in their father's house again. Because when they go back to their father's house after 1 week, they will be told they are a failure. They'll be shamed for leaving their father's house. They'll be called a fool for leaving the mansion and going back home with 4 children. We need to establish institutions and agencies and safe homes for them to help them rebuild their lives.
Talk of safe homes. Ellen Soa was asking, what do we do as a church when we find or see abusive relationships? And Sister Kiasena Dwansoa responds and says, churches must have counseling services to address the needs of members. Nanaya Kunedu Ejapon comes in and says, there's also the Pearl Safe Haven. It is a new shelter for survivors of domestic violence. And so
Functioning yet.
it's not functioning
It's
yet.
not functioning. That's what I said. How many of
It's a private
it's a private
one.
one
Yes.
that has not been fully functional yet. We don't have a safe
But
haven.
there is the ARC Foundation one.
It's not it's under renovation.
Working. Yes, it's working. No, it's working.
It now.
It's working, yeah.
So that's the only one we have now.
And then the government one is renovated.
It's not working there.
What
Those two
what
is
left
those two is
over
building its own.
personnel,
Yeah.
Okay.
So we don't have.
We don't have them.
We don't.
As a state,
The,
we don't have it.
anything.
the difficulty is that we are looking at the state
To do
or the
things.
nation in Accra. We are not thinking about the
Beyond Accra.
Fanchi Beto Bebo Chok, or those villages. Okay,
Fabanchi Beto Mechok.
before they walk miles into even the district capital to seek redress, things have happened to them already. And look at the recent killings of spouses. Men are killing the women more, but the women are also killing the men. Yeah, people are killing people.
That's the sentence you should make.
So these are the issues that
And that's
we
where
need
the-
to address.
And that's where the social good
Yeah.
comes in. The states can't do it all.
Oh,
The states can't do it all.
And so the church, for instance, should step in.
yes.
Yes, a lot of people, and that's the thing. When these things happen, the first point of contact are family and churches. Hardly will they go to the police unless the person is bleeding
Yeah.
or the person has been badly beaten or raped, where they can't hide the abuse. But most often than not, when it starts gradually, the places they go to are family and church. So the church plays a huge role in this process. It plays a huge role in this process, and it can support in this fight.
Nanaya Konedu comes in again and says, I love that we covered this topic. Thank you. We thank you too for tuning in, and very educative topic Ruth Redu comes in with. And I don't think this is a conversation which would ever end. I think we need to continue having conversations around this particular issue and how, as a Christian organization, the church can step in to intervene and to provide the necessary support for victims who find themselves in some of these situations. And it's important that we learn that the fact that, sometimes certain people don't step out of some of these situations because they feel they brought it upon themselves, and so they should endure it. If you have forgotten, the story of the prodigal son should remind you, he brought it upon himself, but he came to a point of realization and said, how many servants doesn't my father have who have so much to eat and to even spare? So I shall get up and go to my father and tell him I'm sorry. So don't stay in a place where you be abused because you feel you are the one who brought it upon yourself. Get support. Get support. It's not always that it may end up, a relationship ending or terminating. You may get support through counseling one way or the other. You may get some resolution. Because I think one of the things you do is not just conflict management, but also conflict resolution.
Yes,
and so there's the possibility of it being resolved.
Right.
And so let's get support. I would want to announce once again that if it borders on criminality, you can call 191 or 18555 to get support from the Ghana Police Service. And the Domestic Violence and Victim Support Unit is set up to specifically deal with some of these things. My producer is telling me to look at a few more questions, and it appears the comments are coming in fast, but I don't think I have any new ones for now. So maybe I'll wrap up comments, and would want to talk solutions, and I would want each of you to speak directly to our audience, and let us seep in how we can ourselves, if we find ourselves in such a situation, what we should do, and if we know someone who is going through such a situation, the bystander, what your role is supposed to be.
One thing that we should all know is that we have to reorient ourselves to accept victims, not in a way to blame them. Oftentimes, the victims are blamed by the society, but it is our responsibility to reorient ourselves to rather give support to the victim, or what we call the survivor now. And that is the most important thing. We should not blame them. We should rather support them. And the support meaning that you have taken a step, either to report to the appropriate institutions, the authority, or the family head, the church leaders, to be able to come in. We should always also try as much as possible, as we said earlier, to build the institutions, the support institutions. Those are very critical for all of us. The other thing that we should also know is that we should continue the education to every corner of the country, to every corner of the world, because abuses even cross boundaries. The person who is abusing you moves to another country, takes you along, and could abuse you there. And so we should be able to extend the sensitization to every part of the country. Every Ghanaian, the 30 million of us that recently were counted, should know that we have a law, and the law will deal with you. But the social, cultural support, or the psychological support, should be up to the extent that everybody knows where to report, everybody knows where to seek counseling. Recently, those who have said that they have opened a place, all-inclusive place, or one-stop support system. Let's utilize it and demand for more. That these things, the government should also set up and replicate all these things in every region and every district, so that people will be able to, in terms of proximity, come closer to the solution center.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Frank Buja. Yes, Joanna, your final comments.
I don't know who's watching us. I don't know what situation you are in. I don't know if you know anybody who is going through this problem, who has this challenge. But I think what I would say is that if you or someone you know has this problem, please again, speak up. If you're uncomfortable calling the police, if you're uncomfortable going to the police service, find somebody you trust, find somebody you believe in, and seek help. And plan a way to leave the situation in which you find yourself. But whatever it is, wherever you find yourself, find a way to seek help, speak up, and speak to somebody. Whatever you've been told, whatever you have been made to believe, it's not your fault. You are not to blame for it. You didn't bring this upon yourself. You are not worthless. You are not a useless human being. You are worthy of somebody's love, and you are worthy of the Savior's love. So wherever you find yourself at this moment, please look for help. Seek somebody you can trust and start planning your exit. Your life is worth it. And as much as possible, begin to plan your exit. Your life is more valuable than anything else that you think or you have been made to believe. So please, if you know somebody or you know of a situation, seek help for that person as soon as possible. And you can save a life. You can genuinely save a life. Thank you.
And would want to thank both of you for making time to come have a chat with us on Let's Talk About, even as we talk about gender-based as well as intimate partner violence. And I think the message is very loud and clear. You are not worthless. And so don't let anybody make you feel that way. You are made in the very express image of God. And so you cannot be worthless. And this has been our show, coming to you live from Trinity United Church, Legon. The show has been Let's Talk About. And today we've been talking about gender-based as well as intimate partner violence. Until same time next week, when we come to you with another edition, if it is the case that you are a victim, speak up. And if you are the bystander, when you see something, say something. My name is Benjamin Ofeado. Let's have a good night.
This is the air I breathe. This is the air I breathe. This is the air